Well, it's a milestone of sorts today. 20 years ago, the Goods and Services Tax was introduced officially to Australia. It was a measure that lost leaderships and caused mass confusion. So 2 decades on, how is the GST going for us? Let's bring in finance expert Michelle Maynard from Carbon Group. Hi, Michelle.
Afternoon, Lou.
The GST was a huge deal. How has WA fared over the past 2 decades?
It definitely was a huge deal 20 years ago, with most of the public not knowing how it was going to affect our day-to-day lives. I think 20 years on, most of us don't actually even think about it unless you're a business that has to report it every quarter. But WA getting its fair share of GST is something that still raises headlines these days. We only get about 45 cents in every dollar of GST revenue that we actually raise, with the rest going to other states to prop them up. So most West Australians, I think, would like us to see getting a little bit more over here in the West.
Yeah, it's never really seemed fair for us over here. There is fresh discussion on applying the tax to a broader base, like private school fees and fresh fruit and veggies.
Yeah, so GST is actually a very narrow tax. It doesn't apply to many things, and it's also really complex about what it does and doesn't apply to. So, for instance, the ATO guidelines on food alone is 88 pages long, as it details what you can and can't apply GST to. There are 45 separate rulings dealing with the one issue about whether GST applies to cakes and cake decorations. So broadening the base will serve 2 purposes. One, it'll make it a lot simpler, but 2, it'll also collect more revenue for the government, which is something we need at the moment with the economy and the budget a lot in deficit.
Yeah, absolutely. We know New Zealand has pushed its GST to 15%. Here in Australia, though, it remains at 10%. Do you think it's time to increase the rate?
Yeah, well, the OECD average is about 19% worldwide, so we actually are really below that when you look at our other counterparts globally. If we raise GST to 15%, that would generate about an extra $30 billion of revenue every year. But I think what a lot of people are worried about is how those lower income families are going to go. Data actually suggests if only about 30% of that extra revenue increased welfare payments or family payments, 2/3 of lower economic families would actually be better off. So raising the rate is something that probably is not going to pass the pub test, but if people see the benefits, we may actually be able to get it across the line.
Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense. We know the GST raises about $70 billion a year, and as you mentioned, our finances are hemorrhaging because of COVID-19. Some people would argue that this is the perfect time to both raise the tax rate and broaden its base.
Lou, people far wiser and who have been around a lot longer than me have been arguing that our tax system needs an overhaul completely. And doing those 2 things, broadening the rate and broadening the base and increasing the rate, are only a small part of that. We need to look at the system as a whole. We can't be reliant on income tax and corporations tax when our population is ageing and our companies have less profit. So I think the whole system needs to be evaluated, raising the rate and increasing the base part of that, but only if other taxes are abolished and other rates come down.
Yeah, well said. Michelle Maynard, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lou.